Good morning, everyone. Today is the lecture 8 of cloud computing. In this lecture, we'll discuss about cloud computing architecture. Although there is no global architecture for cloud computing, many researchers have suggested various architectures, but I will restrict my discussion to a specific architecture proposed by Professor Rajkumar Bhuya, University of Melbourne, Australia. So he proposed one architecture. He called that architecture as market-oriented architecture. Okay, that we are going to discuss so that you will know that request or what kind of works are going on in cloud, right? So how a client is requested a particular request, how it is processed in the architecture of cloud, that we will see in the market oriented architecture. Then, although we have discussed already about IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS, so I'll tell you about details about infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service, and other type of clouds, that is private, public cloud, community cloud, hybrid cloud. Also, will detailedly we discuss it in today's class. Then I will tell you about one of the important framework that is called as SPI framework. Many researcher has or many books also suggested something called SPI frameworks, and we'll see SPI evolution. Then we'll compare SPI framework from cloud with the traditional IT model. What is there in the before cloud computing? What happened after cloud computing? That we'll discuss. Then we'll end this lecture by essential characteristics of cloud computing, and I will tell you with respect to the popular NIST US, that is National Institute of Standard Technology, what are the cloud computing models, what are the characteristics, okay, as for a niche that we'll discuss. So this picture visible. My
Yes,
screen is
sir.
visible. Yes, okay. So this picture indicates the market oriented architecture. So as you can see here, there are four important entities in this architecture. First one is called as your user or broker. Second one is called as your SLA, resource allocator. SLA stands for your service level agreement. Third one is called as your virtual machine. Fourth one is called as your physical machine. So once you understand this architecture, whatever we covered in the last six classes, the concept will be clear. So see here, excuse me. Okay, so if you see here, the top layer is always called as your application layer. I told you always the top layer is a software layer, that is application layer. Bottom layer is called as your network layer or layer, you can, that consists of more hardware in comparison to the software, right? So see here, if a person want to use cloud, so in that this one, whatever is represented in the network structure, earlier it is called as your network structure to represent like this. This architecture is called as network. Later it is represented for cloud, right? So how a user, like these are the users. User want to communicate with the cloud. How they do? What they need first one, that is your internet connection. Without internet connection, it is not possible to access the services of the cloud. Second, what they require? They require a web browser, okay, or a interface, okay, web browser or interface. In the web browser, they will type a URL, right? After typing a particular URL, okay, there is a identifier which we call as URI. Specific identifier is there, okay. So by the web browser, they can access to the URL of a particular cloud provider. There they will give the identity details. Every resource and everything is located in the form of an identifier which we call as URI. Then they are able to access to the cloud computing services based upon their requirement, right? So here you can see the web 2.0 technology is playing a major role. So you can explore Web 2.0, but recent version is released, that is 3.0. So you can see how this technology will help the cloud to provide various services. So see here, while we are using the cloud services, sometimes these users may not be comfortable on using these cloud services. Like I told you in some class, suppose I want to book a flight ticket, but I don't know how to book a flight ticket. I am not aware of this Make My Trip or Paytm. Okay, wherever you are booking, like IRCTC is also providing Air IRCTC. So these website I am not aware of, or I also don't know. Even if I am aware of, I am not comfortable to book a particular ticket. So what I will do, I will go for a particular agency, right, which is represented in a different, right. So I will specify my requirement to a particular client, a particular agent, or we call this one as a broker. The broker is comfortable to book a particular ticket or book the services in the cloud. So the broker, what it will do, it will book the ticket on behalf of a particular user, right? Similarly, whenever we are going for Tatkal ticket, especially we know that Tatkal ticket is limited. So instead of booking from our mobile phone, we know that there is a bandwidth restriction. Internet is quite slower. So what we are doing, we are relying on a particular agent. We are specifying the requirement. The agent is going to book the ticket, Tatkal ticket for a particular passenger. Similarly, if you are comfortable to use the cloud services using these things, if you are comfortable with these things, you can use. Otherwise, what you can do, you can take help of a broker. That broker, what it will do, it will be using the cloud service on behalf of a particular user. So this is the first layer. I think the first layer is clear, right? So let us see the theory part. So there are four main entities as I already specified. First entity is your user or broker. So user or brokers acting on the behalf of the user submit this request from anywhere, any place, right, or any time. You can request for a particular service. Okay, that's why it is saying anywhere in the world to the data center and cloud to be processed. I'll tell you these terms later, data center and cloud. But user can directly access to, user can request for a particular service, or user can tell the same thing to a broker who is acting on behalf of a user to use this particular service, right? So this is the first entity, that is user and broker. Coming to the second one is called as your SLA, resource allocator. Whenever we are purchasing a particular item or particular product, there is a warranty card. Suppose I want to purchase a refrigerator or AC, there is a warranty card. What this warranty card indicates, this warranty card contains set of terms and conditions, right? These terms and conditions, if you see, some things are guaranteed, means they will say that if these things will be damaged, then within 6 months, then we are going to replace it. For 5 years, there is a warranty period with some service charge, right? So everything is documented in the form of a warranty card, and some conditions are written in the warranty card. You are signing on the warranty card, right? You are signing in the warranty card before purchasing a particular item, right? And the service is subjected to the terms and conditions, right? Similarly, in cloud, if you want to use any type of services, you and your cloud provider need to sign in a document that is called as a service level agreement. So that is a digital document, you can say. You have to sign whatever terms conditions you have, whatever terms conditions as a service provider, both need to be written in the service level agreement. So that if the service will not be provided, okay, by the provider, or at later point of time, if service consumer claims that the service provider has not provided the same, so what will happen? The SLA document will be reviewed to know that who is guilty, right? So that is called as your SLA, service level agreement. which is a contract between your service provider as well as your service consumer. Okay, they are signing in the document. There are a lot of issues with respect to SLA also that I'll take in later classes. Okay, so this unit is going to allocate resources to you as per your service level agreement. Whatever things you are mentioned in SLA, whether you require 10 virtual server or 100 virtual server based upon your application, you need to specify in the SLA. So by reviewing this SLA, the cloud service provider is going to allocate the resources to you, right? So this is the second component. Let us go inside that. What we have inside that, something is written as service request examiner and admission control. So what service request examiner? For example, as a cloud service provider, you have, let's say, 1000 number of servers. Taking this figure, figures are not the actual figures, just for an example I am taking. So you have, as a cloud service provider, you have 1000 server. Suppose a particular user requested you for 10,000 server. He is ready to pay for 10,000 server, and he is expecting that 10,000 servers are required to run its application or to maintain its load. So what you will do, what this unit will do, will start examining the request. The request made by this particular user is about 1000 server, but as a cloud service provider, at the max you have 1000 server if your resources is not allotted to anybody, right? So what will happen? You are not going to solve this request because the requirement is very high, and if you see your resources is very less. So you cannot fulfill the request of this particular user. So what you will do? You will reject the request. The request is rejected. Okay. For example, another cloud service provider is having 10,000 number of server, right? Let it be CSP1, let it be CSP2. And he is having 10,000 number of server. So this user also requested to another cloud service provider for 10,000 number of servers. But unfortunately, these cloud service provider has already assigned, let's say, 100 number of servers to few other customer. So the balance he has how much? How much servers he has? 9,900 servers, right? 9,900 server. 100 servers are already given to some other user. Let it be these users, right? So while examining the request, what you found? The requirement is very high, but whatever resources you have less. So here also you have to reject the request. And you have to accept the request only if you are ensuring that sufficient number of servers are available to you. Otherwise, the request need to be rejected. If you are not rejecting the request, while the user is using the resources, he will get resource scarcity. If you get resource scarcity, that is the violation of your service level agreement. So you need to pay to your customer as you are violating the service as a service provider. That's why each and every service need to be examined, okay, before it is going to provide to a particular customer. So that is very much important, right? Somebody specify some requirement, you are going to fulfill the requirement. That's why last class also I told you an important point that is called as quality of service. If the quality of service is high, high means the requirement is clearly specified and that requirement you are going to follow. Otherwise, the request will not be accepted, right? Otherwise, the request is going to be violated by you, right? So better you should not accept such a request. But if the user has not specified any kind of specific requirement, that we called as famously called as low QoS, right? So then you can take the request because the quality of service is not that much rigid, or there is no specific requirement. Based upon the availability, you are going to provide the services to the user. So that is called as your service request examiner. Okay. Another unit that is called as, another word is there here, that is called as your admission control. What admission control is says, for example, in a particular institute, right? Total number of computer science seats is, let's say, in your case, it is, let's say, 180 seats are there, right? Is it possible to accommodate 181 people? No, because number of seats are requested as 180. Okay, coming to the technical example, for example, on top of a particular physical machine, at the max you can create 5 virtual machines based upon the configurations or something you have analyzed that maximum 5 virtual machine can be created. After creating 5 virtual machine also some resources are left over, right? But capacity is maximum 5 virtual machine. Are you able to create sixth number virtual machine? No, you cannot go for sixth virtual machine or sixth number of virtual machine on top of the physical machine. So that is called as your admission control. Whatever your maximum limit is there, once you fulfill that limit, in order to make company benefit, should not go for higher number of virtual machines or higher number of requirements or higher number of users to accommodate limited infrastructure, right? That is called your admission control. You have to control, right? You cannot go for thousand number of users, right? You have to see how many users at max you can come, you can accommodate. No doubt, if you increase the number of servers, sorry, number of clients with the with a particular infrastructure, definitely you will get more revenue. But main thing is that you have to ensure that the resource also, whatever resources you have, that is also maximum, or that should be that should be provide service to the all the customers, so that the SLA is not violated. Okay, if you unnecessarily accommodate more requests, then there is a scarcity of resources, escalation will occur, then you are going to pay to your customer, right? So on the basis of the service request examiner admission control, lot of policies are there. One policy is called as your here customer driven service management. Another is called as computational risk management, autonomic risk management. So these are the various policies are there based upon the customer requirement. Suppose you know that for deploying a particular application, that application require at max 100 server, but the client is requesting you 150 number of servers. Okay, you know that maximum requirement is 100, but the client is not aware of the technical details. He is asking you 150 server. Yes, client is asking 150 server to go for it, right? 150 number of servers, right? You should not tell because of the market benefit. You will not tell that no need of 150 server, 100 server is sufficient. Okay, like that, a lot of requirements are given by the client, which need to be fulfilled by the cloud service provider, right? And there is a risk also, right? A lot of risk is there. For example, a cloud service provider will know that 100 server is sufficient, so at max it will give 100 server, right? You know that there is a concept called single system image or a concept of virtual organizations, so in which you can say that I am giving you 150 server, but if you see inside there are 100 servers are there, so that rest 50 server you can accommodate some other user, because you know that maximum requirement is 100 only. At any case, it should not exceed 100. Okay. So here you are taking a risk, right? Although the user is requested for 150, but what you are doing, you are saying 150, but as there is a virtual infrastructure, the user may not aware of your complexity of the infrastructure. So by taking that advantages, what you are doing, you are giving 50 servers to some other clients in order to get some extra benefit. Such type of cases happens. Such type of cases already happens, right? Like somebody will ask you, this is my requirement. So what we are saying, yes, we have sufficient number of stocks. Okay, he required two, well, you will say that okay, I have 20 stocks, right? If the requirement will go, suppose his requirement is two, right? You are in 20, so he is now telling okay, I need instead of two, I need, let's say, 10, but actually you have five. So what you will do? You will request some other cloud service provider to other service provider to give the resources so that you can fulfill the demand of 10. Right? That happens. That is the marketing strategies you have to follow in order to get the benefit. Right? And this resource management nobody is going to control. Whatever system they have designed here, nobody is going to control these things. This is a completely autonomic process, right? That is generally called as, now whenever we go for a particular shop, that is written as self-service. Nobody is going to tell you this is a good product, this is a good product, like that, right? You have to go for shopping, you have to purchase the product. Only for the billing you have to rely on a particular person, right? But other services are fully automatic. At any point of time, anywhere from the world, you can request for services, right? Any type of services you can request 24 into 7, right? So apart from the service request examiner and admission control unit, you have lot of units. For example, pricing is a unit, VM monitor is a unit, dispatcher is a unit, accounting is a unit, service request monitor is a unit. These units are coming under the entity that is called as your SLA resource allocator, right? And they are responsible for, these units are responsible for their own functionality. Some responsibility is given to each and every individual component, right? Individual component we have given. So for example, if you see here, pricing will decide based upon the usage of the resources by a particular customer. We are going to allocate the price. Okay, we are going to generate a bill, right? Although billing is the part of accounting, okay, but this pricing unit will tell you whether the price is variable or fixed or it is on demand. So such things will be decided by this pricing policy, right? So that's why pricing has various policies. I'll tell you different pricing policies available in various research paper. VM monitor. This unit will see the status of the virtual machine which is available in the third entity. Whether a virtual machine is active or whether a virtual machine is idle, or whether a virtual machine is sleep mode, or when to make a virtual machine in wake up mode, everything will be monitored by this particular unit, right? Dispatcher, you have already studied in operating system. There are a lot of dispatchers are there, like we call it a long term scheduler, okay, long term dispatcher, short term dispatcher, medium term dispatcher. The dispatcher will decide which request should be mapped to which particular resources based upon the requirement. Okay, so I'll say that customer 1 to request should be mapped to server number 3. Customer number 2 is should be mapped to server number 1 in order to get the services. That is the responsibility of the dispatcher. Dispatcher moves from one component to another component, right? Next is your accounting. Accounting, you have to see the pricing policy, whatever subscribed by the user. So based upon that, you will see how many hours that the particular customer has used. So based upon that, you will generate the final billing policies, right? So that user is going to, okay. The last one you can see here, service request monitor. This keeps track of each and every services requested by every individual user. So it will say that what is the tentative time to complete a particular application that are submitted. The applications are submitted by the user. So you have to see that which request will complete today, which request will complete in next 1 hour, so that when the resource will be free. So that will be decided by this monitor log. Monitor log file will tell you, right? So that accordingly you can accommodate some new user request. So that is the responsibility of SLA resource allocator. Okay. So SLA resource allocator acts as an interface between whom? Between the data center. The bottom two part, virtual machine and physical machine, can be combined and called as your data center. Or in data center we are creating cloud, right? That's why you call it a data center cloud. And then the top part you have user. That's why it is saying it is an interface between the data center and cloud service provider, or we can simply call it a cloud and the external user and broker. So it is a just like an intermediator, right? And what kind of request doing what we discussed. First one is called as your service request examiner and admission control. So it checks the quality of service requirement. Based upon the quality of service requirement, it is going to accept your request or it is going to reject your request. Right? It also contains a pricing module. What is the responsibility of pricing module? Pricing module checks what kind of policies you should enforce to a particular user. For example, the peak hour price is different from the off peak hour price. Early days, if you remember in your childhood days, right? Many mobile providers are giving the service from night 11 to morning 6. If you recharge 7 rupees, then they are providing you unlimited services. Why they are providing 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Or 6 a.m. or 7 a.m.? Why not in the daytime? Because daytime the bandwidth is fully occupied, but the night time the number of call is very less. So what happened? This off peak hour time they are picking, they are giving low, but in the peak hour the price is very high. Right, nowadays we have unlimited connection, that is different thing, but early days we are maintaining peak hour and off peak hour. Similarly, the charges may be fixed or charges may be variable. Fixed means I will tell you, you use these services, at the end of the month you have to pay this much dollar. Okay, this is a fixed strategy. Whether you will use or not use, you have to pay for that. Like electricity, you have a price. Let's say base price is 100 rupees. If in a particular month, right, you are not using electricity, you are outside your home, so you are going to pay the base charge. Base charge is compulsory for all. That is required for maintenance. That is required for managing the system, everything. Or the minimum price, minimum wages we are providing to the staffs. For that we are choosing the best price. Sometimes what will do in order to attract the customer, like you know that early days, for each and every call is calculated per minute basis. So what happened? One person talked for 1 hour, 1 minute. Sorry, 1 minute, 1 second. So it is treated as 2 minutes. 1 hour, 59 seconds is also treated as a 2 minute. That is not fair because we are going for minute basis, right? How to avoid it? We are going for changing the price system. What we will say, like Tata Docomo launched in that days, right? If for 1 minute 1 second, you pay for 1 minute 1 second. If somebody is talking for 1 minute 59 seconds, he is going to pay for 1 minute 59 seconds. Right? That is with respect to second you are charging. Right? Similar kind of strategies you can apply in the cloud also. I am in the service for 20 days, I am going to pay for 20 days, not for 1 month, because my strategy is changing pricing scheme, not a fixed pricing scheme. Right? You can adopt a particular pricing scheme as well, which depend upon your supply and demand. Purely depends upon the supply and demand. What is supply and demand? How many users are requesting you to the you are requesting a particular cloud service in order to get the service. Based upon that, we may increase the price. Like you know, IRCTC Premium Tatkal scheme. In Premium Tatkal scheme, now base charge is there, Tatkal charge is also there. After that, there is a dynamic price. For example, there is a festival season. Yeah, festival seasons, people are moving here and there, or they are going to home. At that time, the dynamic pricing factor is little high. So what will happen? The ticket is 1,000 rupees in Tatkal, but if you book in dynamic Tatkal scheme, you will get the same ticket in 2,000 rupees. Somebody booked after some time, he will get in 3,000. Somebody may get in 5,000 as well. What they are saying? They are looking into various factors, that this season people will travel. This is a New Year season. This is December 25th, right? Okay, Christmas season. So people will travel. So they are increasing the price. Or per day they are regulating this price. Such type of mechanism also you can adopt a pricing scheme, right? And the last one is your accounting factor, where your bill is generated and you are going to pay for it. And generally in the cloud, we are assessing cloud through a credit card. So accounting section has your credit card and details. So they will automatically deduct from your account, right? If it is free, it is okay. Once the free period is over, whatever resources you are using, we are going to charge it. So that is the role of the accounting policy. Okay. Then the next part is your virtual machine. I told you you can create multiple virtual machine on top of the physical machine. As you can see here, this is your physical machine. On top of this physical machine, you have created two virtual machines. This is a physical machine. You have created three virtual machine on top of this physical machine. Just like you have studied in operating system or organization, something called virtual memory. So it is a concept, right? So virtual machine is also like that. It is not owning any kind of resources. What it is doing, it is taking the resources of the physical machine, or the physical machine resources are divided and they are provided as a services by the help of the virtual machines. And who is going to monitor these things? The hypervisor is there who is creating the virtual machine and monitor everything about the virtual machines, right? Like here you can see here, somewhere we can create two, somewhere we can create three, somewhere we can create more based upon the capability of the physical machine. And if you see, these physical machines may be a workstation, it may be a supercomputer, it may be a server, right? It may be anything. And if they are present in a single place, we can call this one as a data center. This is owned by your cloud service provider. So a cloud service provider has multiple data center. This is an example of a single data center. Okay. Or you can say this is a one type of data center. This is another data center. Another data center present in various part of the world, right? Where the services are provided, and the whole system is called as your data center, right? Multiple data centers are under a single organization or single company that we call as a cloud service provider, right? So I think this part is clear. So if you have any question, you ask. Otherwise, after that we will continue. So are you able to get this concept? Please write in the chat box. Is it clear? What is market oriented architecture? Yes. Okay. Now what we will do? I'll tell you about some other component also, right? I think this data center is part is clear. So don't see like that. Like I told you in some class also, there are a lot of data center. Million of data centers are there. Okay. If you see the total number of data center is million, and around 4 million data centers are there in United States, right? And each and every data center typically you have 50,000 to 80,000 servers. So imagine how many servers are required, how many servers are there, right? And these many servers are on. That's why energy has a primary factor in every for every data center or every cloud service provider is concentrating on this one, because they are charging, they are paying the energy cost. In order to run these servers, you require electricity, so you are paying the energy cost. So they are also looking for some eco-friendly solution in which they can reduce the energy cost. Next is if you come to the pricing mechanism, right? So pricing mechanism, I told you, there may be a fixed price, there may be a changing price. Okay, there is a peak hour price, there is a off peak hour price. Similarly, there is a supply demand basis also. You can determine the price. You can increase the price in a particular moment also, right? But everything need to be clear in the service level agreement. You cannot modify after mentioning the service level agreement. Once you have modified everything in the service level agreement, that is final. That is the final document will be reviewed if there is any conflict among the among between the user as well as your provider, right? So if you see here in this slide, we have 7 different pricing mechanisms. Research paper. first mechanism is called as your fixed max. What fixed max strategy saying? It is configuring its price parameter in such a manner that, for example, one person is using a CPU for 1 hour, then he need to pay $3, right? That is the fixed max strategy. If you use this machine, you are going to pay the CPU. Suppose you are using 2 CPU for 1 hour, then you are going to pay $6, right? So per CPU per hour you are going to pay $3. How many CPUs you are using, how many hours you are using, based upon that the calculation will be done. But again the concept will come, if a person is using for 1 hour 1 minute, that will be treated as 2 hours. So I request you, after the end of this class, you go for Amazon EC2, right? One class I will give a demo on Amazon EC2, right? In Amazon EC2, you can create a particular account, right? Just like you are creating a Gmail account or Facebook account, you create your account. Once you create your account, it will ask your basic details, including your credit card information, right? Nowadays, few people are also telling me that debit card information is also available. So once you specify your credit card information, what they will do? They will deduct $1 from your account, right? And they are going to provide a instance which we call as T2.micro instance. There are various instances of this micro instance, large instance, X large instance, but T2 micro instance is free. That's why they are giving T2 micro instance after verifying your credit card details, right? So once they verify, they are going to pay you, give you T2 micro instances for 750 hours. 750 hours they are going to provide you per month. Can anybody tell me how many hours are there in a month? You calculate. They are going to provide you 750 hours per month. Up to 12 months you can subscribe Amazon EC2, right? So you calculate how many hours are there in a month. Can anybody tell? Calculate it. You write in the chat box. Wait. I have not till now I have not discussed Libra, right? So it is 720 hours, right? So they are giving you 750. Means 24 into 7 you can use your services, right? Up to 12 months by spending only $1. But once this period is over, once 1 month is over, what they will do? They will directly charge from your credit card. So you have to ensure that you are getting your services for only 1 year, that to be 750 hours per month. So that is the maximum hour given by Amazon EC2, right? So you can create an account if you are not, if you don't have credit card, or if you don't want to give your credit card or debit card information. Still also you can browse and see the details of the micro instance or X large instance or large instance. Their details you view it and see how these instances are different from each other, right? Similarly, there is another pricing scheme is there, that is called fixed min. So as you can see here, you are paying $3, here you are paying $1. Means the CPU configuration, if you see virtual CPU configuration in the first case and second case, it is different. Okay, here you may get little bit more powerful CPU in comparison to the fixed min. And if you see the next two pricing scheme, which uses your off peak and peak hour, or you can say off peak and on peak hour. Generally, we call night 12 to day 12. Okay, this is called as your off peak hour. That's why we are charging $1 per CPU by considering fixed min. Okay, but when there is a 12 p.m. to 12 a.m., the time what is going on now, right? That case you are going to pay $3 per CPU, where we are following this fixed max strategy, right? But another pricing scheme also gives the same similar strategy, but it is taking the maximum price as $2. So what we can observe here, the CPU configuration is little bit low, but more than the fixed min, but less than the fixed max. Okay. But in order to incorporate the supply and demand based pricing scheme, there is a scheme that is called pricing mechanism that is called as Libra plus dollar. So they have given the name as Libra plus dollar. And this dollar is followed by three things. It may be a maximum one, it may be a minimum one, it may be an automatic one. If you require higher resources, you can opt X. If you go for minimum, you can opt minimum. Or if you select automatic, it will be following your minimum strategy. Right? You go for Libra plus dollar, these three schemes are there, these sub mechanisms are there, right? Sub pricing mechanisms are there. But Libra plus dollar is maintaining everything in the form of few parameters or few components, you can say. One component is called as your static component, another one is called as your dynamic component. Static component is represented in the form of alpha, which you can consider as a base price. What I told you, even if you are not going to make telephone call, or if you want to make anything, suppose you are not using electricity, still also you are paying some base price. Like nowadays mobile phones are providing, if you are not using any services, then also per month in order to activate the incoming, you are paying something 49 rupees or 50 rupees. So that is your base price. That is your alpha parameter, that is static parameter. What is beta parameter? Beta parameter is a dynamic component which you can regulate based upon your supply and demand. For example, see in the max case I am taking beta value as 3, but mean value we are taking beta value as 1, right? So based upon that you can calculate the resource, the cost of each and every individual resources. I will tell you how you are going to calculate with this alpha and beta parameter. But if somewhere it is mentioned Libra plus dollar max, then you have to ensure that the alpha price is 1 and beta price is 3. Based upon that, calculate total price, right? Similarly, in the minimum case, you have to calculate alpha is equal to 1 and beta is equal to 1. Now see what kind of calculation. So it is saying Libra plus dollar uses a more fine-grained pricing function. So fine-grained means we are going a detailed view. Coarse-grained means we are going for an abstract view. So Libra dollar is going for more fine pricing function that satisfies four essential requirements. There are four essential requirements for pricing of the resources to prevent workload overhead. Workload means your application. Whatever applications you are giving in the form of a directed flow graph, DFG, data flow graph, or you are giving in the form of a directed acyclic graph, there are four essential requirements. It may be flexible. It may be flexible. Is missing. So it is flexible, or it may be fair. Okay, it may be dynamic, or it may be adaptive. So these are the different requirements user has to select, right? It is flexible or fair or dynamic or adaptive. Based upon that, you are going to design a pricing function. For example, the price Pij, I want to calculate the price that I represented as Pij with index value Ij. What Ij indicates? See here, the price Pij for per unit of resource utilized by reservation request I. Whatever request a user is making, that is represented by I index, and that request need to be completed in a particular node, that is J. Okay, Ij, I is the reservation request, J is nothing but the computing node. If you want to calculate Pij, that is a user is making a particular request I have assigned the request I to a resource J through the SLA resource allocator units. Then you can calculate Pij is equal to alpha into P base J, where P base J is your base price, beta into P utilization of J. Utilization of J is multiplied by a dynamic component, that is beta. What P util J is there? How much you are utilizing the things. That's why it is saying P base J is the static pricing component, it is multiplied with alpha, so it is a static pricing component. For utilizing a resource at node j, so you are requesting your request I to the node j, which can be used by the service provider to charge the minimum price. I am telling you that is minimum price. Why we are charging minimum price, base price? To operational cost or maintenance cost, or to recover, to give the minimum wages to various employees, right? But this utilization of j, okay, is a dynamic component. It is multiplied by a dynamic component which is computed as a factor of p base j based upon the utilization of resource at node j for the required deadline request I. So for each and every request you have a deadline. So in order to calculate this p util j, you have to rely on the p base j. Also you have to rely on two other parameters, that is how many resources you have and how many resources are used, from where you can calculate how many resources are free. So if you know that I have 10 resources, out of 10 resources, 10 resources are completely free. So this parameter is 1, right? But if you total number of maximum resources you have is 10, but number of free resources is only 2. That means 8 resources are already assigned to some other user request. If you see 10 divided by 2, it leads to a high parameter. But if all the resources are free, it leads to low parameter, right? So if the number of free resources are less, then the demand is more. If number of resources free is more, then nobody is using your resources. So based upon that, you can calculate the utilization of j. Accordingly, you can select the parameter beta. Right? Generally, beta is selected as 3, as we discussed in the previous case, but it can be varied with respect to the cloud service provider. This is a simple pricing mechanism, but you can adopt a different pricing mechanism with respect to the cloud service provider. So your resource maximum j is nothing but your maximum unit, and how many are utilized. If you calculate based on that, you can calculate how many resources are free. Okay, based upon the deadline request, because each request need to be completed prior to its deadline. So in this manner, you can calculate the pricing of various user requests. Okay, so we'll stop.